Hello and welcome to Foundations for Algebra, Unit 4A, Lesson 3. Today's objective is scholars will simplify exponential expressions. I know you're thinking that's what we've already been doing, right? Well, now we're going to try some that are a little bit more complex. So, how can we simplify exponential expressions? Here, the first thing we need to think about is m's are going to combine with m's, and the 2 doesn't have anything to combine with. There's no other numbers. So we're going to bring down the 2. The 2 is going to stay by itself. Then I have m to the 4th times m to the negative 3rd power. Well, remember when we multiply two exponents, or two powers, we add the exponents. So 4 plus negative 3. Well, 4 plus negative 3 gives me 1. So I am left with m is to the first power, but we don't write it, remember? So it would be to the first power because 4 plus negative 3 is 1, but we don't write that. Okay. Let's come over here to the second one. Here I have two numbers. I have a 4 and a 2. So I'm just going to write them next to each other. 4 times 2. And here I have n to the 4th times n to the negative 3rd. Times n to the 4th times n to the negative 3rd. Remember, the only operation happening here is multiplication, so I can rearrange them any way I want. Well, 4 times 2 is easy. That just becomes 8. N to the 4th times n to the negative 3rd. Again, we're going to add our exponents. 4 plus negative 3 just becomes 1, so this just becomes an n. Again, there's a 1 there. We don't write it. Nice and simple, right? Let's try a few more. Okay, so here's ones that look a little bit more complex. Let's start with this one on the left again. I have 2 2's. So 2 times 2 is going to give me 4. And then let's look at the x's. Here I have x to the 3rd times x to the negative 1. So let me just write them next to each other. X to the 3rd, x to the negative 1. Then I have y to the negative 3. And then I have y to the 3rd. So I'm going to bring down my 4. X to the negative 3. X to the 3rd times x to the negative 1. We add the exponents. 3 plus negative 1 is just 2. So I get left with x squared. Over here. Ooh, that was really bad. Try that again. Over here, I have y to the negative 3rd times y to the 3rd. Again, I'm going to add those exponents. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So that gives me y to the 0 power. But wait. We said that anything to the 0 power is what? It's 1. Well, if this becomes 1, we're just going to not write it because we don't write times 1. So this just becomes 4x squared. Now let's try this one. Here, I have a negative 4 power here. So I'm going to first give it to each of the two things inside here. So I have 2 to the negative 4th power. And then I have x squared to the negative 4th power. Well, remember that our negative powers just mean they flip over. So first thing we do is I'm going to simplify this part here. Remember, when we have a power raised to a power, we multiply. So I have 2 to the negative 4th power times x to the negative 8th power, because 2 times negative 4 is simply negative 8. Then I need to get rid of these negatives, because when we're simplifying, we don't want any negatives left at the end. So negative just means it goes to the bottom of my fraction. So now I have 1 over 2 to the 4th power, x to the 8th power. And that's all we do with that. Okay, so the negative power just means it goes to the bottom of my fraction. Okay, a couple more. This first one again, I'm going to give the 2 to each of these. I'm going to separate them. So I have x squared raised to 2nd power. And then I have y to the negative 1 raised to 2nd power. I'm going to multiply my exponents. So I have x to the 4th power times y to the negative 2nd power. Okay, so this x to the 4th is going to stay on the top, but this y to the negative second has a negative exponent, so we're going to put it on the bottom of our fraction. So it goes to the bottom, becomes y squared. Now let's try this next one. So here I have a x to the negative 1. Well, remember that negative 1 means it just goes to the bottom. So I'm going to leave, there's nothing on top anymore. So I have 4x to the 4th power, which was already there on the bottom, times x to the 1st power, which we don't bother writing the 1. So we're just going to erase that 1. If there's nothing left on top, we just put the 1 there. So now I'm going to combine these. X to the 4th times x gives me x to the 5th. So I have 1 over 4x to the 5th power. Not too bad. They look a little scary, but they're not that bad. Let's try a couple more really complex ones. Okay, so let's look at this one right here. First thing we need to do is I want to get rid of all of my negative. Actually, no. First thing I want to do is see these ones that have zeros? They're just going to go away. Because remember, they just become 1. So I have 3x to the 3rd, y to the negative 1, z to the negative 1 over x to the negative 4. Okay, so now we haven't seen this before. We have a negative on the bottom of our fraction. If it's on the bottom, then the negative makes it move to the top. If it's on the top, the negative makes it move to the bottom. So let's rewrite this. I have 3x to the 3rd. That we know is on the top. But now I have this y to the negative 1. So that's going to come down here to the bottom. That's going to come down to the bottom and just be y. And I don't write the 1. Then I have x to the, or z to the negative 1. Again, that's coming down to the bottom because it's negative, so it becomes down to z to the bottom. Then I have this x to the negative 4th that's on the bottom. So again, because it's on the bottom and it has a negative, we're going to move it to the top. So that becomes x to the 4th up here. So now we just need to simplify this by combining this x to the 4th and x to the 3rd. So this becomes 3x to the 7th over yz. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense. Let's try one more problem over here. So first thing I'm going to do with this problem on the right is I'm going to rewrite it so that anything that's a negative moves to the bottom or top depending on where it's at. So I have 2x to the 4th. This y to the negative 4th, so you go to the bottom. So that becomes y to the 4th down here. The z to the negative 3rd moves to the bottom. So that becomes z to the 3rd. And then I start with what's already on the bottom. So then I have I'm going to put the 3 at the front just because it makes it easier for me, 3. And then I have an x squared. Again, I have a y to the negative 3rd because it's on the bottom, it moves to the top. So that comes up here, goes y. Comes up here and goes y to the 3rd. And then I have this z to the 4th that just stays in the bottom, z to the 4th. Okay, so that's not too bad, but now I need to rewrite it so that I combine everything that's the same. So here I have 2x to the 4th, y to the 3rd over 3. I have an x squared, so I just put them in the same order. X squared. I have a y to the 4th, y to the 4th. And then I have z to the 3rd and z to the 4th. We're going to add those. It becomes z to the 7th. Okay, so now I need to look at combining my x's and combining my y's. Again, I'm going to subtract. I'm going to cancel out any that cancel. So when I do that, I'm going to do this in green so you can sort of see it better. I have 2 x to the 4th over x squared becomes x squared. And then for the y's, I'm going to be left with 1 y, but it's going to be on the bottom. And this will be all over 3 y z to the 7th. Okay, those are the most difficult ones we're going to look at. Try them on your own, and I will see you in class.